It is officially regular season football now. Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews. I am your host, John Delray. Today was officially Cutdown Day. That's right, that's the reason for the later pod today. Ultimately, we wanted to see as many of those cuts get through, get official, as long as we could before I decided to put this episode out. And we're almost there. The Packers had 25 moves to make coming into today. Thus far, they have made 23. I do have my iPad on and sitting here. I'm going to be checking it frequently to see if those last two releases are announced over the next 20 minutes or so, just so I can be the first to know and say it to you right away as well. But ultimately, it's going predominantly how we expected that it would. The cuts have been fairly well balanced. A few slight surprises, but not too many. We knew coming into it that this would be a very difficult to predict 53-man roster. There was lots of prognostication about, just these oddball scenarios, different things that they can do, shorting different positions, and then keeping more guys on the practice squad, trading different guys, which I will admit is still a possibility. We've seen it around the NFL today, including a big trade between the Saints and Eagles, some minor ones between the Vikings and Texans, Vikings and Steelers. So it is entirely possible. The other thing that I would say is please bear in mind that this is the initial 53-man roster. Brian Gutekunst in the last couple of years has always unveiled that 53, and then within the next couple of days there is inevitably change, as partly because players are released from other teams, or there's injury reserve designations, which I don't really see that happening this year for the Packers specifically. Picking someone else from another team could very well happen. I could see that being the case at safety, linebacker, long snapper, even wide receiver. Laviska Shenault, the wide receiver from the Jaguars, was traded last night from the Jaguars to the Panthers for some pretty low round draft compensation. And supposedly, as was rumored and reported this morning, the Green Bay Packers were in on those conversations, that they were one of the teams that was vying for his services and just couldn't pay the price of a couple late-round draft picks. But that doesn't mean that the Packers aren't actively searching out wide receiver help right now. That could have been a special case for one player that they believe would have helped. Could be that they're actively searching the wide receiver market to upgrade probably your number 7 wide receiver spot. As of right now, Samori Toure is actively on the team as the number 7 wide receiver. And in fact, it's been tweeted about and everything that he is on the initial 53. He made it as the number 7 wide receiver, 7th round draft pick, at the expense of someone that we're going to talk about in here in a little bit. But that doesn't mean that the Packers are done upgrading, done shopping, done looking for somebody else. If they're involved in that Laviska conversation, how much do they really love Toure? Are they looking to upgrade at that spot? We don't know right now, but it's possible. So please bear in mind that this is the initial 53 before we get to, about 10 days from now, 13 days from now, when they're playing the Vikings in week 1. This roster could look different. Another thing to keep in mind as part of the strategy of this year is the practice squad has expanded. It now is 16 players that can be included on the practice squad, 10 of which have to be under, I believe it's 4 years of service, if I'm getting the minutia of the details correct. And then you can have 6 players as well that may be 4-year or more veterans. I went through the other day, yesterday, what the practice squad prediction was going to be. I do think the Packers are going to try to retain as much of their talent, as much of the guys that they're letting go today as they possibly can. I don't see them doing this mass revamp of the bottom of the roster, going out and getting 10 guys from other practice squads or 10 other cuts, but I do see possibility that there could be a couple spots where we see that happening. For active signings to the 53, those are probably going to be some type of veteran. I've gone over extensively in the last couple of days. Jeremiah Atachu, Jason Pierre-Paul, Matt Overton, the long snapper. Different guys that may be able to help at a number of the roster spots where depth is lacking. Let's say that. So going into the cuts, the news of the day. First of all, let me just check Twitter super fast. Let's just see quickly if there's any other news. And there's not yet. Okay. Ultimately, the Packers had to have this in by 3 p.m. Central today. It very well could be 6 p.m. when they announce it. It could be 7 p.m. The Packers are notorious for waiting until the last minute. Especially with roster cutdowns. We've seen other teams already do their formal announcement. The Packers won't yet. They wait until they absolutely have to announce it. So the NFL already knows. The Packers had to report it by 3 p.m. Central. It now is 4:24, and the Packers have not released theirs. So that's why I decided to record now, even though this isn't perfectly complete. Like I said, I'm going to be checking the iPad as we go, seeing if there's any news as we go. So in terms of the offense, who was released today? Danny Etling, I think we all expected that. No reason to carry 3 quarterbacks, and one of them is the 4-time MVP. Going on to running back, Dexter Williams was released. Yep, kind of saw that coming. And then the other one is Tyler Goodson. It's already been reported that the Packers are hopeful to retain Tyler Goodson. Goodson certainly showed burst, maybe what you'd say more of a dynamic runner than his competition, Patrick Taylor. Patrick Taylor, keep in mind, we don't know the status of yet. All of the people calling for 2 running backs could be proven correct here this evening yet. But as of right now, Patrick Taylor is still on the bubble, could be on the roster. Tyler Goodson, we know, has been released. They are hopeful to bring him back on the practice squad. If Patrick Taylor makes the roster, it will be because of pass pro and special teams. Like LaFleur said repeatedly, was going to be the determining factor for RB3. So that would fall right in line. I mean, they did not hide behind that at all. They said, pass pro, special teams. Those are Patrick Taylor's departments. So Tyler Goodson being released, not a massive surprise. I certainly would hope. I was stumping for 4 running backs. I understand why that grew to be impractical, especially as other offensive linemen really began to show more potential. But Tyler Goodson hopefully is going to make it through to the practice squad. And then we still could see some call-ups for him and some regular season action as the season goes. At wide receiver, we saw a few releases already. Ishmael Hyman, Juwan Winfrey, and Travis Fulgham. Now, Juwan Winfrey here is the surprise. Aaron Rodgers on 3 different occasions came out and stumped for him. Said that he believed in what Winfrey was doing, that he was doing the right things. But at the end of the day, the Packers are opting to keep Samori Toure. We've talked before about how Toure realistically has more potential, a higher ceiling at wide receiver. He was a 7th-round draft pick this year, whereas Winfrey's kind of bounced around for a couple of years now. Always a fringe practice squad roster type guy. Winfrey, I gotta believe they're going to try to get on the practice squad. However, I will not be shocked at all if Juwan Winfrey elects to go somewhere else, chooses to go to a different practice squad. Keep your eye on Chicago. With Luke Getsy now running their offense, Winfrey would obviously know the system. Also a possibility in Denver with Nathaniel Hackett. But Chicago quite possibly has a worse receiving core than Green Bay. Theirs is absolutely one of the worst in the league. Winfrey could make a home down in Chicago if he so chose. So, Samori Toure wins the roster spot over Juwan Winfrey. Toure, the one of more potential. Winfrey, the one of more polish right now. Toure did make a number of flashy plays during the preseason. And also not to be neglected here, Toure's on a rookie contract for the next 4 years as a 7th-round pick. Winfrey does not have 4 years left of contract time. The Packers, after this season, Sammy Watkins is a free agent, Randall Cobb is a free agent, Alan Lazard is a free agent. They do, at that position in particular, need to start looking toward the future and say, who do we have that's under contract for more than 1 year? And now you can add another guy to that list by keeping Toure on the 53 and not risking him going elsewhere. So logically, I do understand it. I just think it's more of a long-term move than an immediate move, and I hope that Toure can still contribute right now, like Juwan Ridfrey realistically could have in some capacity. Moving on to the tight end position, USFL star Sal Cannella, he was let go. Nate Becker and Elise Mack. This went pretty much exactly as I was thinking it would. Tyler Davis, the ire of scorn right now for many Packer fans, given his preseason showing, is still eligible to be on the roster. I do think he will be on the roster, mainly based on his special teams contributions and the nice things that he did at the tail end of the regular season last year. So no real surprises there. Becker was let go with an injury designation. I would not be shocked at all. Elise Mack was kind of starting to make a push to get onto the 53. I won't be shocked at all if Elise Mack is attempted to be retained on the practice squad. Offensive line, they had 3 guys coming in today that we knew were question marks. Coming into today, they still had 12 linemen. 9 of them were basically considered locks because of preseason mini camps where they've been playing, how they've been playing, etc. You knew you were walking in with 9, barring any trades or something shocking. And that left on the outside looking in as the bubble guys, 7th round pick Rasheed Walker, Caleb Jones, the mountain of a man, and then Michael Menet, who's an interior guy as opposed to the other 2 being tackles. Rasheed Walker had that fantastic game against the Chiefs. He was considered a draft day steal when they got him in the 7th round. And then because he played fantastically in his only preseason game, there suddenly became a lot of conversation about, well, the Packers have to keep him, right? They're going to lose him. There are other teams actively searching for the kind of player that he is for the bottom of their roster. Packers can't let him go. And indeed, that wound up being the case. Rasheed Walker wound up making the 53. Caleb Jones was released, as was Michael Menet. I believe that they're going to ask both of those guys back on the practice squad. Caleb Jones, I understand, is a little bit of a risk being a tackle, showing the physical traits that he had all camp. He's a bit of a risk. He could get claimed. Michael Menet, I don't think there's any danger there. I think he'll be coming back. But Caleb Jones, there's a risk here. At the same time, the Packers couldn't actively keep 11 offensive linemen right now. So they made the difficult choice. Caleb Jones let go, Rasheed Walker retained on the 53. How this plays out in terms of the practice squad, who's active on game day, etc., this is going to be one of the more interesting ones to match if Caleb Jones can get retained on the practice squad. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball. The apple of Wisconsin's eye, Jack Heflin. The trash can full of dirt, unfortunately, was let go today. Packers have already made it known, supposedly, to his people that they would like him back on the practice squad. Whether that happens or not, we don't know. But Jack Heflin, Chris Slayton, and Ikeo Byers were all let go today. I just think that this is more scheme-related than anything. Heflin did play incredibly well this preseason, as did Chris Slayton, and I feel like Chris Slayton's really gone under the radar. In a lot of ways, he's played just as well as Jack Heflin has. Keep in mind, please, that this is Chris Slayton, not TJ Slayton. He's a roster lock. TJ was the draft pick of last year. Chris Slayton was the offseason signing this year, who many people thought was just going to be a camp body, and then kept on playing well. So Jack Heflin, Chris Slayton, I think both could very well be asked back to the practice squad. Wouldn't be shocked by that at all if they both make it to the practice squad. Heflin made so many headlines, there's possibility he won't. But at the same time, every team right now has got their own Heflin. He is skilled. He has improved quite a bit. But he has shades of Tyler Lancaster to his game, and we know that those guys are not that difficult to find in terms of roster building. So hopefully the Packers are able to retain both. That's what we'd really like to see. That's the ideal option here for the purposes of defensive line depth. Moving on to linebacker, outside linebacker specifically. And one quick note about defensive line. I do not want to miss this. Jonathan Ford, the 7th round draft pick of this last draft, is still eligible to be on the roster. We have not seen anything yet, any announcements, any reports that he has been released. I gotta believe he's going to be one of the 2 yet to be released. His play this this preseason was pretty miserable, to be honest. And I think if you're going to move on from Heflin and Slayton, you got to be moving on from Ford. According to PFF, he was the worst graded Packer on the roster through the course of their 3 preseason games. He's only a year longer of contract time than Heflin would have. I'm just not seeing where you let go of Heflin and keep Ford. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So Ford, I'm thinking, is going to be one of the final 2 cuts when we do finally hear. But we'll see. So Jonathan Ford's still eligible to be on the roster. Moving on to the linebacker position, outside linebacker specifically, Ladarius Hamilton was let go, as was Kobe Jones. Kobe Jones, he of some of the great pass rush moves that we've seen in the last couple of weeks, ultimately just didn't do enough, nor did Ladarius Hamilton. Both have been released. I am not surprised by this. I don't know as if either is going to be back on the practice squad. I think it is slightly dependent upon what we see in these final 2 cuts, because Jonathan Garvin, Tipagalier, and then Engabari, who I think is a lock at this point, but still Tipa and Jonathan Garvin are out there either to make the roster or be released. I think they're both going to make it. I've been calling for that all along. Garvin is the most complete linebacker of the bunch, and he did play pretty well last year, even if it is a drop-off from starter to him. And then Tipa, who's kind of your special teams guy. I think they're both going to make it, which leaves Ladarius and Kobe Jones just outright released as the only 2 released. Whether each one comes back to the practice squad, we don't know. I could see the Packers asking both of them. I could see them asking neither. We'll see. Inside linebacker, right now, no news to report. We know that there's 4 roster locks here: Isaiah McDuffie, Chris Barnes, and then your 2 starters, Devondre Campbell and first-round pick Quay Walker. The question here is Ray Wilborn, and the Packers have shown kind of a preference to Wilborn over time, and he's still eligible to make this roster. He could be one of the cuts yet. He might not. We don't know. But as of right now, he's still alive and checking the iPad. Yeah, no, he's still going. So Ray Wilborn stands a shot to make this roster. We will know soon as to whether he actually does or not. If he does, it's going to be as a special teamer. We know for a fact the Packers like him on special teams. We'll see if that earns him a 53 spot or not. Moving on to cornerback, I am slightly heartbroken. Rico Gafford was released today. I really thought that his 4.22 speed and his ability on special teams would get him a 6th corner spot, but we know that they are not going to be retaining a 6th cornerback at this time, because Rico Gafford was released, Keandre Thomas was released, and KB and Ento was released. They got rid of all 3 of them, leaving 5 corners on the roster. Thomas and Gafford, I gotta believe, are going to be asked to come back to the practice squad. I have seen it widely reported already that they are going to be asking Gafford, that they've made that known. Have not seen much of the same for Thomas, but I gotta believe it's being done as well. KB and Ento, I think that experiment's done. I think, like I said yesterday, he's a known quantity. You know what you have there. You know that he realistically might be at his ceiling already, so it's okay to move on. But really, that leaves them with 5 corners on the roster, and a lot of people thought they were keeping 6, so we'll see how this develops. And then safety, we get into one of the more fascinating conversations of the day. Micah Abernathy, USFL star, the guy who's only been here a couple of weeks. Micah Abernathy has officially made the 53-man roster. What a story. I mean, to go straight into the USFL season, straight to Packer training camp. He participated in his first Packers practice before he even saw the playbook. A wonderful story. Seems, by all accounts, anything that I've read about him, anything that I've seen of him, seems like a great guy. A wonderful story for him to be making this roster. In terms of the flip side, in the cuts, we have Innis Gaines. He was let go. Devontae Cross was let go. And then the real shock, and perhaps one of the more shocking cuts of the entire day, Sean Davis. Sean Davis, when Darnell Savage went down, it was Vernon Scott and Sean Davis who were the next safeties up. Vernon Scott was let go with his injuries designation, and now Sean Davis the same. Shortly after the announce was released, I believe it was Bill Huber put out a story for SI.com about Sean Davis suffering a knee injury, and that being the main reason for the release. He was looking to be safety 3, especially with Vernon Scott gone. So safety could absolutely positively be a place that the Packers look to upgrade over the next couple of days before we get to week 1. Luckily for them, there have been a few releases over the last couple of days. Tart, the former 49er and now former Eagle, has been released. There have been a few others. It's quite possible that the Packers are going to be looking there, just because now, in terms of your backup safeties, it's thin. It's very thin. You let those 3 guys go, and what you're left with at this time, we know Micah Abernathy's made the 53. Dallin Levitt, I would be shocked if he didn't make the 53 now that he's back and practicing. And then you have 7th round pick, hybrid safety linebacker Tariq Carpenter. Carpenter is still alive by all accounts. He's still eligible to be on the roster. Again, checking the iPad. I have not seen any news, nothing. Have not seen anything about Tariq Carpenter. We know that they like him. We know that they think he can do a lot of versatile things. He plays special teams well. It's quite possible he's going to be on the 53, which is a little bit of a change. I thought Sean Davis would be on and Carpenter would be out, but with the injury and release of Davis, I think this opens the door to Tariq Carpenter making the roster. But again, your safety depth is thin, very thin. This could be a place that the Packers really consider looking in free agency. And, just going to say it. Don't shut down my podcast after only 2 weeks, but Kevin King's a free agent. And last year he played in the box some as kind of a safety corner hybrid. So, the Packers may be evaluating free agent options, and he's one. So just saying. We'll see how this goes. But that's what you got for now. And then potentially the biggest news of the day on the whole, Mason Crosby officially coming off of the physically unable to perform list, which means he should be their week 1 kicker. They officially released Ramiz Ahmed, who has done a great job. Another USFL story, a guy who had some accuracy issues in the USFL and then came here and he's made everything since signing in Green Bay. We know it's been widely reported already that the Packers are hoping to retain him on the practice squad. So Mason Crosby officially on the 53, no longer on the unable to perform list. And then you've got Ahmed, who they're hoping to get back on the practice squad to essentially be Mason Crosby's backup. So just a quick recap here. Guys who are still kind of on the bubble, guys that I could see. They have 2 more cuts to make. I think it's going to come from this list somehow. That would be Patrick Taylor, if they do decide to do the 2 running back thing. Hope not. Tyler Davis, Jonathan Ford, Ray Wilborn, Tariq Carpenter, Jonathan Garvin, Tippa, and then Dallin Levitt. So we'll see how the news breaks. I will be back here tomorrow to do more of a recap. I'll cover those last 2 releases that we're going to see later tonight. I'll also spend tonight researching the releases across the league. Who are some guys that we could see the Packers actively make moves for over the next couple of days? How is the week 1 roster going to look different? I will be back here tomorrow to discuss all of that. In terms of the rest of the week, Thursday is going to be a little bit more of a memorabilia focused pod. I'll cover whatever announcements there are. I'll cover the practice squad claims that the Packers have made. But then I do want to pay respect to the Dave Robinson auction that took place at Heritage Auction House. So I'm going to be talking about that as well as some other memorabilia things. I'm very excited. I'm gearing up potentially next week to do our first collection interview to talk about the memorabilia side of the Packer fandom. Very excited to get going on that, and I'm hopeful for next week, potentially the week after, depending on scheduling, but we'll see how it goes. And then Friday, heading into Labor Day weekend, barring something unforeseen, I will probably not be putting out a podcast on Friday. I have a very, very eventful this weekend coming up with my brother moving, as well as, fantasy drafts and the things to that effect. Friday, basically you only be hearing from me if there's big breaking news, if there's something going on with the roster. But Friday, very well as the last long weekend as we get into football season, and all the weekends I'll be working. It's probably going to be Friday, a day of no pod, but I will update you accordingly as we go through the course of this week. Where you can get all those updates always is by following me on Twitter at John Delray, JONDELRAY. Follow me on Twitter. You will get updates about the pod. You will get my opinions on so much more and everything Packer related. Beyond that, hit like, hit subscribe, share, do whatever you got to do. Let's build a Packer community together. Thank you so much for joining me for another edition of Lombardi Time Brews. It has been a true joy thus far, getting to know so many of you and having a brand new Packer podcast. So please spread the word. Let's build it together. Thank you. Have a great day.